Hi again, everybody. We have a special guest joining us today to explain the underpinnings of British America, kind of the English from exploration, moving on through into more modern eras in British history, and understanding how England ended up being a dominant player in the colonization of North America. And joining us today, make sure I get his name right, is the 17th Lord of the Admiralty, Sir Fleming St. John Smythe, from Whitehall in London. Now, before I embarrass myself, is it Lord St. John Smythe or Sir Fleming?
Joseph, I must say I prefer Lord St. John Smythe.
St. John. Right. Now, your lordship, so we're clear, you're only the 17th person to serve as Lord of the Admiralty in all of English history?
No, silly American! I am the 17th Lord of the Admiralty, meaning there are only 16 Lords of the Admiralty who outrank me.
I see. So, what exactly does that mean?
What it means, Joseph, is that I am only a heartbeat away from being a heartbeat away, 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 of being the first Lord of the Admiralty.
Well, that's, quite impressive, my lord. So, other than staying alive in case 16 other guys die, what are your duties?
So glad you asked, old boy. I am Master and Commander of HMC Illustrious.
You're the commander of HMS Illustrious? That's amazing.
Oh, come now, Joseph. I said HMC. Her Majesty's Canoe, not HMS, Her Majesty's ship. I command a canoe responsible for the security of a vast 15-meter stretch of the Tees River.
Oh, that sounds really impressive. So, please, Lord St. John Smythe, don't let me keep you a minute more. Please, tell us about English colonization.
Of course. Allow me to prepare my slide deck. Right then, Joseph. So, my slide deck is coming up. All you little traitorous children may learn a bit about the country that still should be your true home. So, this slide deck is something I call England. Triumph of the greatest power the world has ever known. So, this handsome chap we've got here, Henry VIII. Now, Henry VIII's reign is possibly the turning point of modern history. His split with the Catholic Church completely blows apart the relationships that had kept Europe stable for centuries. Henry has decided he's not going to be Catholic anymore. He's not satisfied with the Catholic Church. And certainly you can use the Google to find out things about why Henry was so dissatisfied. Now, since the 1300s, Ireland right next to us, had been under English rule. But with England outlawing Catholicism, Irish Catholics rise up and call for independence, ingrates, and they ask other Catholic nations for help, including our rival Spain. Now, this ends with dramatic effects. England sees Spain as a rival at that time. Of course, Spain is no longer a rival to the greatest nation the world has ever known. And England enters the First Colonial War, sending Protestant troops and settlers to England to conquer the savage Irish. Scooting on a bit, we get the Elizabethan era, under Elizabeth I, the child of Henry VIII. And Elizabeth takes the throne with two goals: spread Protestantism, make cash. Bring in those pounds, Elizabeth. And Elizabeth puts together a bunch of fellows that I like to think I'm a bit like. The Sea Dogs. And the Sea Dogs go out. Now, you might call them pirates. I prefer to call them private naval militias. They go out and harass the Spanish shipping, and the Spanish King Philip builds his invincible armada to invade England. Well, in 1588, we find out who's invincible, old chap, and it ain't you. You're vincible. Our small English ships, perhaps as small as HMC Illustrious, and a miraculous storm destroy this expensive Spanish fleet. Now this, my friends, this is the beginning of the end for Spain, and it's the beginning of the beginning for England. Immediately, Spain loses dominance of the Atlantic, and within decades begins losing her possessions in the New World. And it's the beginning of the beginning for us in England. There's a new national spirit, man. It begets an arts boom, a literature boom, a business boom. And it makes sure that Englishmen like myself have a spirit of adventure. Now, meanwhile, in fundamentalist Puritan areas of England, land's running out. Poverty's increasing. Peasants need land. And religious fervor helps them make sense of the hard times. Now, you've got to understand here for a minute. The Puritans are as English as anybody, and the Puritans, they're part of our new Church of England under Henry VIII. They are strong believers in the Church of England, but they want to make the Church of England better. They want to make it more pure. And so the Puritans are loyal subjects, loyal members of the Church of England, and they're making all these changes to the religion, right? So, they've got a hard life, they're very religious people, and as in many times in world history, hard times, people turn to religion, right? So, they turn to religion, the religious fervor helps them understand the tough times they're living through. Now, that's the peasants. For the noble-borns, such as me, one of the problems is there's not as much land to lord over. Every lord needs a fiefdom, even if he's the 17th Lord of the Admiralty. Now, for the British government, this was a dangerous mix. So they have explorers going out across the world. In the 1500s, you've got John Cabot touching on the coast of Canada, looking for a northwest passage, not real serious. By 1577, you've got Sir Francis Drake, who circumnavigates the earth. By 1583, Gilbert presses exploring a northwest passage to Asia. He believes that if you go up over the tippy top of Canada, you'll get all the way across the world without having to stop on bloody land. He claims Newfoundland for England, but it fails to thrive. The colonies he puts down, they don't stay. Then we get 1585 and Sir Walter Raleigh. Raleigh's expedition presses settlement in Virginia at Roanoke Island. Now, we call it the Virginia Company. This is really in North Carolina now. It's a terrible screw-up. So sorry about it. The entire settlement at Roanoke disappears. It's gone, without a trace. And when Raleigh's men come back, they find a single word on a palisade of their walls: Croatoan. Now, here's the thing. Boyle and your other history teachers, they only worry about history. So they're going to tell you Croatoan was the name of a nearby island, a nearby native tribe, and that's where they went, and they probably lived swimmingly happily ever after. I have an alternate theory. I'm big on conspiracy theories. You can't prove them wrong. My theory is there was an alien spaceship called Croatoan that beamed them all up. You can't prove me wrong now, can you? Okay, so 1587 to 1600, Raleigh leads a few more expeditions, brings potatoes and tobacco back to Britain, but he never had the money backing to make a colony stick. Things get serious, though. England realized that committing colonies takes time, money, and patience. More patience than I have with a lot of you in America. So in 1606, King James I charters the Virginia Company. It's a joint stock venture. It's very much like a public company that you might understand today. Stockholders bought shares, expecting a colony to form. The colony would grow crops. The colony would become successful overnight. They would be able to sell out their shares and become rich, rich men. And James God bless James, he guarantees the settlers the same rights as Englishmen back home, which sets a very important precedent, don't you think? You are Englishmen on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, but you're still Englishmen, with all the rights of an Englishman. So about 100 men sail from Portsmouth in late 1606. Only goal they have, growing crops to make money. Are they here for religion? No. Are they here to create a better world? No. Are they here to create some silly democracy? Absolutely not. They're here to grow crops and make money. That's it. So, we come back to our Puritans and another group called the Pilgrims. So, the Pilgrims are a little bit more hardcore than the Puritans. Pilgrims believe the Church of England had the right idea splitting off from the Catholic Church, but didn't go far enough. So the Pilgrims go further than the authority of the Church of England. And the Pilgrims, you know the Mayflower story, little boat, bunch of people, buckles on shoes and nonsense. Somehow a turkey becomes involved to you colonials. They leave England because they're mad. They go to Amsterdam and Holland because they're mad. They leave Holland because they're mad. They're very devout, very, very religious people. No question about that. They're also really assertive. These are a bunch of people who will tell you how they feel. When they get to this new world, they agree to a piece of paper aboard their ship, which they call the Mayflower Compact. And it's a written agreement to form a government, to submit the minority will to the will of the majority, and to have town meetings at which large issues will be decided. Now, I suppose you could say, oh, it's the beginning of democracy in the Americas. That's only because you don't pay any attention to the Iroquois Confederacy. Pah! Rubbish. Mayflower Compact was important. It was a bunch of Europeans, such as myself, agreeing to govern themselves, agreeing to the will of the majority, agreeing to town meetings that were open, blah, 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 blah. 1629, the Puritans come through. And the Puritans come into this same area, and they form what they call the Massachusetts Bay Colony. They are very devout, but not as assertive as the Pilgrims. They come over with about 1,000 colonists, many ships, lots of cash, a group of separatists among them, who Mr. Boyle tells me you'll be reading about in your reading guide, formed the Rhode Island colony in 1635, and in 1638 they established the Connecticut colony. Now, there's a few other European colonies you ought to know about that I believe Boyle has talked to you about in the past. 1623 to 64, the New Netherlands grew up around the Hudson River, today's New York. 1638 to 55, one that you probably haven't heard of, New Sweden is formed in today's Delaware, falls to the New Netherlands colony quite quickly. Your takeaway from all this. Number one, you should understand England is the greatest country the world has ever known. Second, complex factors led to the rise of England as a power, and their impetus to explore. Getting colonies to stick was hard work. Sure, we threw a few colonies up in Newfoundland, threw another one up at Roanoke Island, couldn't get them to stick, love. So, when it did stick, it sticks with the Virginia Company, and it gets started for a whole lot different reasons than the New England colonies. There's big differences between the Puritans and Pilgrims, and the Dutch colonies had different economies and structure than the English. Now, I've given your Boyle some homework to do, so he'll hopefully understand a little bit more about the differences between the English middle colonies, the New England colonies, and the southern colonies, and he'll be bringing that to you soon. For now, cheerio.